Michael had always believed life moved in quiet, predictable rhythms. Mornings brought soft sunlight spilling across the kitchen floor, the aroma of coffee drifting through the rooms, and Liam's laughter bouncing off the walls, filling the house with warmth. Evenings were calmer, books scattered, quiet games played, gentle conversations that carried a sense of ordinary peace. For years, these routines felt sufficient, enough to call life safe, enough to call it home. He had met Eleanor in college in a philosophy seminar that explored the fragility of human nature. She was magnetic, full of energy and laughter, curious about the world, and impossible to ignore. Michael was drawn to her from the start, captivated by her insight and humor. Their love grew slowly, deliberately, a kind of careful devotion that promised stability. They married, and soon after, Liam came into their lives, a child of uncontainable curiosity, with wild curls and energy that kept the house alive. At first, life seemed perfect. Michael worked, Eleanor managed the home, and Liam explored every corner of their small but lively world, asking questions, discovering things, and dreaming vividly. Michael adored him, watching with awe and pride as his son learned and laughed. These were days when life felt simple, safe, and whole, but subtle cracks began to form. It started small. Eleanor snapped over trivial matters, a spilled cup, a misplaced toy, or a sock left on the floor. Michael noticed the sharpness in her voice, the tension in her posture, the way she could make laughter turn abrupt and cold. Liam noticed too, though he rarely said anything. The boy flinched, sensing the undercurrent, his curls falling over his forehead as he observed the subtle shifts in tone. Michael prided himself on patience. He had always been able to endure discomfort, listen without judgment, and handle conflict with calm. But patience has limits, and over the years, he found those limits testing him daily. He lay awake at night listening to muffled voices, the tension pressing on his chest like a storm ready to break. He'd promised himself he would intervene one day, but the right moment never seemed to arrive. By the time he tried, it was always too late. One night remained etched in his memory. Liam, around 9, sat cross-legged on the living room floor, sketching fantastical worlds with crayons. Eleanor's frustration over something trivial ignited the tension. Michael felt it immediately, a sharp tightening in his chest, an almost electric dread. Time slowed, words sharpened, carrying weight far beyond their meaning. And yet he froze. For years, Michael told himself he would act decisively one day, protect Liam fully, prevent the cracks from widening. But each time, he hesitated. Fear, uncertainty, and love intertwined until action felt impossible. He clung to hope, the dangerous kind, the one that convinces you tomorrow will be different. Tomorrow, he realized slowly, is often the enemy. Life continued in this uneasy rhythm. Morning breakfasts carried subtle resentment. Evening conversations skirted around unspoken fears. Liam grew perceptive, sensing the tension, his eyes occasionally shadowed by anxiety. Michael's heart ached with every glance, every unasked question, every silent worry from his son. Eleanor's temperament was unpredictable. She could light up a room with laughter, warmth, and charm, then hours later display a sharpness that unsettled everyone in her path. That duality made the darkness harder to predict. Michael would lie awake, watching her sleep, wondering how someone he loved so dearly could also be the source of unease. And yet, he loved her. Despite the tension, despite the fear, despite the invisible toll, he loved her. That love became both a shield and a cage, keeping him from action, keeping him from escape. Hope became dangerous, convincing him to endure storms he was not ready to weather. Part 2. Early signs and escalating tension. As years passed, the quiet cracks widened. Eleanor's temper became harder to anticipate, sharper and quicker. Michael noticed Liam growing more cautious, stepping lightly around his mother, learning the invisible rules of tension in their home. The boy's energy began to dim, replaced by watchfulness and hesitance. Michael replayed countless moments in his mind, occasions when he could have intervened, words he could have said, actions he could have taken. Each memory carried a weight of guilt. Night after night, he lay awake, asking himself if he had failed his son, if he had failed as a husband, as a protector. The tension reached a subtle crescendo over time. Eleanor's movements, her expressions, even the tone of her voice became unpredictable. Michael began noticing the details, the way she would pause before speaking, the slight clench in her jaw, the way Liam's hands would tremble slightly as he tried to hide under the covers. Michael's fear was not physical, it was psychological. He feared the moment when the fragile balance would collapse entirely. He feared being too late, and he feared himself, the hesitation, the indecision, the inability to act when it mattered most. He remembered one winter evening in particular. Snow pressed against the windows, muffling the outside world. Eleanor paced in the living room, muttering about things that no longer seemed to matter. Liam sat on the rug, quietly building a small tower of blocks. Michael approached slowly, hoping to calm the air, but Eleanor's glare froze in mid-step. In that moment, Michael realized how helpless he had become. Words were inadequate, actions felt impossible. All he could do was watch and hope for the right moment, for the storm to pass, for the balance to hold. Part 3. The fateful night. Years of tension culminated one cold winter evening. The house felt smaller, air thicker. Michael could sense the storm before it even began, a familiar tightening in his chest. Eleanor was restless, pacing, her muttered complaints sharper than usual. Liam's small figure curled on the rug, wide-eyed and quiet, sensing the rising tension. The argument began over something trivial, almost laughable, but escalated quickly. Voices rose, movements became abrupt, and Michael's chest tightened with a familiar, paralyzing dread. He wanted to step in, to protect his son, to calm the storm, but he froze, caught between fear and indecision. Time seemed to stretch infinitely. Each second carried unbearable weight. Michael watched as Eleanor's frustration grew, as Liam's confusion turned to fear. He realized with sinking clarity that love and fear had become inseparable in their home. Every smile, every kind word, every moment of connection was now tinged with tension, anticipation, and unspoken dread. Finally, Eleanor left the room, muttering to herself. Michael knelt beside Liam, feeling the hollow ache of guilt, the sharp edge of helplessness. He stayed there for what felt like hours, silent, holding his son, listening to the house breathe in the cold night. Part 4. Trial and prison aftermath was inevitable. Authorities arrived, investigations followed, and Michael faced the consequences of indecision and circumstance. He was convicted not for what he had done, but for what he had failed to prevent. 20 years in prison. Prison life was monotonous, but it gave Michael time. Time to reflect, to replay every memory, every choice, every hesitation. He thought of Eleanor, of Liam, of the warmth of their home before tension replaced it. He reflected on his failures and small victories, on what it meant to act or to hesitate under pressure. Part 5. Release and return. 20 years later, Michael walked free. The neighborhood was familiar, yet changed. His house stood quiet, a shell of memories both good and terrible. Two cars sat in the driveway, a reminder that life continued without him. He approached slowly, heart heavy, mind racing with anticipation and fear. Inside, sounds of a child's laughter reached him, intertwined with hushed voices. He hesitated, reflecting on the decades spent waiting, watching, remembering. Part 6. Reunion. And sad ending. When the door opened, Michael saw Liam, older, taller, and guarded. The boy he had once protected now looked at him with suspicion and distance. For a brief moment, Michael's heart leapt. But Liam didn't invite him in. The door closed almost immediately, leaving Michael standing alone on the porch, listening to the muffled life continuing inside. He knocked again, harder this time. A child's small voice cried out, hurried footsteps followed, and hushed conversations carried through the door. Liam's calm, measured words stopped him cold. Please, go home. Michael realized then what time had done. 20 years had passed. Liam had grown, moved on, built a life that Michael could no longer touch. His son had survived, but Michael had become a stranger in the very house he once called home. He lingered on the porch, staring at the windows where life continued without him. Liam laughing quietly with his family. The soft rhythm of a house filled with love he no longer belonged to. The tea he had brought lay cooling at his side, and touched, a reminder that some gestures, no matter how sincere, could not undo the past. The weight of regret pressed down on him, heavier than the years behind bars. All the time, the decisions, the hesitation that had led him here. He realized some losses were permanent. Some bonds, once broken, could never be mended. Michael turned slowly, leaving the house and the life inside it behind. He walked down the quiet street, feeling the cold seep into his bones, the absence of family pressing like a shadow. The house that had kept secrets now held the life he could never reclaim, and the truth settled in his chest like a stone. He was free, yet utterly alone. He paused at the end of the driveway one last time, looking back. The warm lights behind the curtains, the faint laughter, the life that continued, none of it was his anymore. And for the first time in decades, Michael wept openly, not from relief, not from hope, but from the crushing weight of all that he had lost. Some houses keep secrets, some hearts carry them forever. Michael walked away, knowing he would never enter that home again.